That ups my scan speed to 0.26 seconds. Okay. 50,000 gets me 0.9 seconds. And 400,000 resolution gets me 3.14 seconds. Okay. Does that make sense? The longer we read the signal, the higher the resolution.
Is this an averaging thing, or what's going on?
What happens is, if you look at the transient, you see beats. See when the thing comes into focus? The more beats we measure, the better our resolution. When the beats are when you're getting constructive interference among the frequencies and you get that intensity, get you a better signal. The more beats, the better. Okay, now, so this begs the question, how much resolution do you have to do your full MS at? Do you need to do what a lot of people do, which is acquire at a full 100,000 resolution? Or could you acquire at, say, 50 or 25,000 resolution, which gets you the same mass accuracy? Okay. Resolution is the width of the peak. It's not the centroid of the peak. So you might be able to say, I don't need as much resolution, and save scan speed. So that brings up two topics. The first one is, are you going to do anything if you have the higher resolution? So an interesting thing is, Matthias Mann kind of pissed off a whole bunch of people when he published a paper recently saying that this whole concept of doing non-triptych digest searches was stupid, because trypsin from a high-quality company never gives you any non-triptych cleavages. He went on to say that everyone who shows non-triptych cleavages doesn't know what they're doing, and if they did it just like he did it and used high resolution, he proves that all these assignments are wrong. Okay, hence why he pissed off a number of people, including Hunt and Gigi. Okay. And what he found was a lot of misassigned peaks are not pure precursors. It's one precursor sitting on top of another precursor. And hence you isolate two peptides at the same time, and you end up with a mixed peptide MSMS, which doesn't search properly. So his logic is if you're going to use high resolution, you then have to do an additional step. You have to do a high resolution isolation, acquire that data, then do a high resolution isolation with collision energy turn on. And wherever you had a high resolution isolation of multiple peptides, you throw that data out.
What do you mean by high resolution?
He isolates the ion and sets its collision energy to 0. So he does a scan of what was actually isolated before fragmentation. So he knows that he's going to fragment one peptide or multiple peptides. Okay. I was kind of like, oh wow, that's a lot of work, and it's a rare guy. Matthias probably has a big enough name that he can get by telling all these other guys, you know, you're wrong. The rest of us, I prefer not to wreck my career by publishing those kinds of papers. So if you're not going to use that data, if you're not going to look, the question then is, do you need to run 100,000 resolution? Could you run at 50,000 or 25,000 and get the same information? Well, this leads us into the second question. Okay, after we developed this instrument, we kind of looked at it, and one of the guys in manufacturing floor, without a day of college in his life, turns to the PhD and goes, "Why aren't you doing MSMS in parallel?" And the guys in factory are like, "Huh?" He goes, "Well, could you acquire the signal for your transfer in the beginning and do data dependency on that?" And we're like, "Oh, that sounds cool." And hence our scientists provide. So what we do is, let me draw this out. You know? So what we can do on the FT that is very cool. Don't you have FT in here?
That's another 12,000.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So let's say let's draw out the scan cycle. So we AGC, and this is on the linear for 1 millisecond. On the computer, we do the math, and we get out the real injection time, okay, based upon your target value. Okay, now, the next step then is we trap on the linear. We dump the linear down to the FT. We collect on the FT. We excite on the FT. Okay. Now, and I'm now gonna detect, and this is on the FT, okay, at 100,000 resolution, which is 874 milliseconds. Okay. At the same time, I'm now going to parallel. I'm going to take, and I'm going to take the first 25,000 data, which is about that much of the data. Okay. I'm going to FT it on the computer. Yeah, I should be more specific here. This is the linear computer. This is now the FT's computer. Okay. I'm going to ship from the FT to the linear masses. These are low resolution, but there's only a little bit of the FT data, but they're the correct masses. Okay. Now I'm going to MSMS.
You send them back?
Yeah, from the FT to the linear. Okay. Now I'm going to do MSMS on the linear of the top 3 ions.
So that's what allows you to double up.
Yeah, that's what allows this parallel. Now, the FT is still acquiring, okay, while the MSMSs are being done. At the end, okay, the FT does math to make a spectrum. And the last step, for lack of a better term, is fudging. This is done on the PC. So what fudging is, okay, in fudging, we acquired the full MS after we did the MSMS from the full MS. It's out of order. So we go into the raw file.
Because you have to correlate it.
Okay, and we have the MSMS of the linear.